from primitive gathering to trade and close-knit relationships in the past. The amazing Arapaho tribe, greetings. Today, we will talk about the people living in the American states of Wyoming and Oklahoma. We're going to talk about the Arapaho Indians. It is true that several centuries ago, this people led a sedentary way of life, but now they get a significant income from oil, gas, and even gambling business. Did the Indians really eat puppies? And what is the reason for this practice? Aborigines often practiced plurality and married sisters and widows of their relatives. True or false? What is a flat tube that was inherited in the Arapaho tribe? Be sure to watch the video to the very end so you don't miss all the important points on this topic. Arapaho origins. Let's start with the most important thing. Let's find out how the Arapaho people originated on the territory of the present USA. Recall that the entire population of the tribe is concentrated in two main states, Wyoming and Oklahoma. Aborigines first appeared in the northern part of the Great Plains. This occurred in the early 18th century. Subsequently, the Indians divided into several groups or tribes. Aborigines feuded with other peoples over territories that belonged to them. For example, in the 18th century, there were frequent clashes with the Crow, Pawnee, and others. It is also important that some of the Indians were simply displaced. The remaining people were divided into two groups, Northern and Southern Arapaho. The first group from the beginning of the century before last roamed in the states of Wyoming and Nebraska, while the Southern Arapaho stayed near the Arkansas River. The main occupations of the natives were hunting, fishing, and farming, along with gathering. In addition, Indians hunted forest game and bison. The latter were the main source of subsistence for Arapaho families. But soon the situation changed. To begin with, the number of Indian people has grown significantly. At the moment, there are about 7,000 people. Since the last century, the natives began to actively engage in livestock farming, farms appeared, and then many began to work for hire. As for work, some residents have substantial income from the development of the leading sectors of the world economy. And that's oil and gas. Plus income comes from the gambling business, excise-free tobacco products, and of course, not without land lease. As you have already guessed, rent also brings money. We also draw your attention to the fact that the Arapaho tribe has its own language, although many of the Indians speak English, its own flag, and several forms of religion. These are mainly Christianity, Catholicism, and animism. And the very name Arapaho can be literally translated as our people. Also interesting are some traditions and customs that Indians adhered to in the past. Let's talk about them in more detail. Supporting each other in times of need. As you already know, in the past, there were frequent clashes between the Arapaho and other peoples. To keep themselves and their family members safe, Aboriginal people joined together in so-called bands. And to keep in touch, even at a distance, messengers helped. The question arises, did the bands get together, or did they live separately from each other? Of course they did, especially during the hunting season, when joint efforts were required to catch large animals. Bison. By the way, female representatives of the Arapaho people were united in a single community called the Bison Tent. But men had several groups, which were formed according to the age criterion. Women in the Arapaho tribe played a huge role. In addition to giving birth and raising children, they were also engaged in the cultivation of tents made of buffalo hides. Because of the originally nomadic lifestyle of the natives, the construction of portable dwellings had to be taken care of. Buffalo carcasses also served as the main raw material for making many articles of clothing, and such duties were mostly performed by the female sex. Women also prepared food for all members of the family. You will be surprised, but Indians used in their diet not only wild, but also domestic animals. For example, the Aborigines of the Arapaho tribe were not squeamish about puppies. Fortunately, this was rarely the case. The fact is that puppies were considered a kind of delicacy, and therefore they were occasionally cooked and served on the table. With the advent of horses, a whole revolution took place in the Arapaho tribe. Besides being able to move quickly from one point to another, the Indians mastered the skill of hunting on horseback. This was especially so in the process of rounding up buffalo. No wonder that almost every family had as many as 10 horses. Among other animals, the Arapaho had dogs, which were used to transport specific goods or other valuable cargo. Family relations. Of course, separately, it is worth talking about the family of the Arapaho tribe. And although at the moment family relations between people are formed, as in most peoples, it was not always so. It is enough to go a little deeper into the past and learn something interesting, which we will do now. As we know, several centuries ago there were frequent wars and conflicts. Because of this, no one could guarantee that the families in the tribe would remain intact. But what to do in case a man left to fight back and never came back? For this purpose, the Arapaho Indians invented an effective way. Men married sisters as well as widows of their brothers. It was quite convenient considering the unforeseen and unfavorable situations that could come at any moment. But this is not all. It turns out that polygamy was also practiced among the Aborigines. Again, all this happened in the past. It is only known that certain peoples elementarily introduced variety into their personal life. After marriage in the Arapaho tribe, there was a special rule that applied to the male members of the population. Men were forbidden to look at their mothers-in-law or even talk to them. A similar situation applied to the latter. Women also had no contact with the groom of their daughters. The basic sacredness and ritual of the Indians. Now let's take apart the attribute of the supreme deity and sacred ritual, which were an integral part of the life of the Arapaho Indian tribe. In this case, we are referring to the flat pipe and a religious ceremony called the sun dance. The flat pipe, also called the sacred pipe, had a special significance to the tribe. It led the marching line during the Arapaho processions. It was also a must-have item that was passed down through inheritance, which is very important. And, as we mentioned earlier, the flat pipe was an attribute of the supreme deity of the Arapaho people. Regarding the ritual of the sun dance, it should only be noted that such an event took place every year. As a rule, it began at the end of the spring period or in the summer, and the ritual directly foreshadowed high fertility, successful buffalo hunting, and of course, prosperity in families. Indians in the process of carrying out the ritual of the sun dance asked for high fertility in women. This ritual is something similar to the well-known to you, not by hearsay holiday of Ivan Kupala, which is held annually. Conclusion. Thus, the Arapaho tribe is a people who are able to surprise with their traditions and customs in the past. Indians in the process of their formation passed a hard way. Nomadic and primitive way of life in such people was left behind.